Welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council with hosts Grace Evans and Moses Brattrud. Stay informed on the top stories on life, family, and religious freedom. Get the facts, stand for truth.
Hello and welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council. I'm Moses Brattrud with Grace Evans. We are your co-hosts for this really cool special episode. I probably say that every episode is special.
I was going to say we say that every time.
Yeah, but the thing is, the one thing that I think is different about this episode, Grace, is that we have something that we need you to do.
Yep.
And we have a call to action, and
Yep.
I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit. We need you to talk to our senators. We need you to talk to Senator Klobuchar and Senator Smith.
Marriage is under threat. We need your help.
Yes. Grace is being a little bit ironical there, but and I'll get into the details. So we are going to talk a little bit later on about the quote-unquote Respect for Marriage Act, which is going to be voted on in the U.S. Senate.
Respect.
Respect. Their quotes. And but first, really interesting, aside of the abortion debate that you don't hear a lot about, is the fact that women who have abortions often regret it.
Yep.
And so, Grace, you have a story on that for us.
Yes. So our friends at Alpha News recently ran a story highlighting some women that have gone through abortion and face regret. And so I just want to share a little bit of some of their testimonies, highlighting that women actually do regret abortion. And not only is it a physical detriment to women, we've talked about that multiple times before, but it is really an emotional detriment towards women. And these are the stories that they do not want to tell, that the opposition is not trying to tell. These are the women that pro-abortion advocates are trying to silence because this makes them look bad, and their entire narrative that abortion is somehow empowering goes out the drain, right? So one of these women was interviewed by Alpha News, and she said, this is a quote from her, she said, quote, "They tell you in the abortion facility, they are lightly going to suction out tissue, and the machine sounds like the loudest vacuum ever. It's like your insides are being pulled out. At that moment, it's too late, but you know this is the worst decision ever." Now, it makes me
horrible.
so sad, and because I've seen the movie Unplanned, have you seen that?
Oh, man, I don't remember. I've certainly seen clips of it.
So good. So that's a movie highlighting Abby Johnson's story.
Yeah.
She was one of our keynote speakers a few years back. But she was a former abortion clinic director, actually.
Yeah.
She was the youngest in, I think, the nation. And she was very pro-abortion, even had an abortion herself. But then she one day went into the actual operating room and saw that baby on the ultrasound getting suctioned out. And that's what made her decide, wow, I can't do this anymore. And she actually had another daughter at that point. But anyways, I'm talking about this because it made me think of that movie. It's not like graphic in that it's like overly graphic, but it definitely shows the trauma that abortion is. And like there is blood. And that's what I thought of. And I think it's something to hear about it, but it's another thing to like see that happen.
Right.
So definitely recommend Unplanned because I think it puts it into perspective of like this literally is life and death. I think we can all become numb to that fact.
Yeah.
Even me, like who I've worked in the pro-life movement for a few years now, and I think like immediately I had that initial shock, and I think all of us face that at some point. But then it's easy to think, okay, we agree it's so terrible, it should never happen. But you're like you become numb to it almost. Yeah. So she's very open. This woman that was interviewed is very open about what happened to her 10 years ago because she thinks and she hopes and prays that her story is going to change lives and save a life. So she says, that's the thing about abortion. They don't tell you the future. They don't let you know the ramifications of what happens when you allow your child to die in the womb, which is supposed to be the safest place for that child, which is so true if you think about it. The place that should be the safest place for children has become the most dangerous in America, which is tragic, right? Like that's a mother's womb is a place that should never be a place of like war and like, am I even going to survive in this territory? You know, it's like that is literally designed to create life.
Yeah.
That's the baby's home. Another woman said that they recently held a few events holding signs saying, "I regret my abortion," all over the Twin Cities, all over Duluth, Red Wing, etc. And a lot of people would come up to them actually and say, "Me too. Like this happened to me too. I also regret it." And a lot of women actually are afraid to come out and say that because most of the time women who regret abortion, a lot of people don't know they ever had one.
Right.
Like maybe even their husband doesn't even know.
Right.
So of course they don't want to come out and share that. Or even if people know, they don't want to resurface all those negative feelings.
I saw that one of the women featured was someone who had an abortion when she was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And now it's 10 years later. And I think that it is so brave for someone to do that because she has this life now, you know, presumably. Maybe she's married, maybe she has kids, other children, I should say. And she obviously must realize that her whole life would have been different if she had that baby. And yet she's there marching and she's carrying that sign saying, I regret my abortion. And I think because, you know, with Dobbs and with everything else, there's just been so many sob stories from everyone from Hollywood celebrities to just people in every possible field where women have said, I needed abortion to get ahead in my career. I needed abortion because I was pregnant and scared, et cetera, et cetera. And nobody is talking about the other side of it. Nobody's talking about what actually...
when we win is when we hold the opposition to their extremity. Like how the extremity of what they're arguing for isn't just, if I may use the word just, it's not just first trimester abortion.
Yeah.
It's not just in the case of fetal abnormality or in the case of life of the mother, so to speak. It's fully taxpayer funded, all 9 months, any reason at all times, right? Yeah. And so
fully automated luxury space abortions.
Right. And this woman that you're talking about, she's the one I've been quoting actually, and she recounts that the abortion clinic said that she'd be able to have other children if she went through this abortion, but she actually suffered a miscarriage later in life, and she's never been able to get pregnant again, which is really...
Oh, my goodness. That's so tragic.
So sad, because she thought she was giving up this baby now, but she's like, okay, but I can have this later in life. Like, I recently talked to a woman who I didn't know personally, but I was connected to her through a mutual friend, and she was considering abortion because she was, I think, a freshman in college, and she just was like, I can have kids later, now just isn't the right time for me. And it was just really sad because she ended up choosing to go through with the abortion even after I talked to her extensively, because she was like, I know that this isn't the right time for me, but I know I can do it later. And I kept telling her, no, like, there is no guarantee that you will be able to do it later. And even if your body is 100% fine and like you are fertile and everything, you are going to suffer the mental trauma. Like, I guarantee that's going to come back to bite you. And so, really sad.
And you're alluding to this, but abortion can actually reduce your chances of later being able to become pregnant. I mean, if there is a complication to the abortion, that I don't think that's very common. But even just, not just that your fertility might be lower later on, or that you just might have missed the boat on that, because women's fertility does steeply decline after a certain point, but also just the fact of having an abortion can affect that. Yeah. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
That's okay. This same woman kept saying that when she was in the abortion facility, they kept telling her, like, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. And she says, it's a lie, it's all a lie. They try to package it in a beautiful bow that it's okay to do and you're going to be fine, but it's all a lie. And she said that she was angry because 10 years ago when she had that abortion, she said if it hadn't been legal, she never would have sought out an illegal abortion. And she said, I felt like we were given a lie that it was a constitutional right to take the life of our children. Yeah. And I think this is so true. It's kind of something I've been getting at a lot, and I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll write a piece on it, just because people are like, well, why should we try to even make it illegal? But it's a real thing. Most women are not going to go out of their way to try to do a procedure if it's illegal. And not only that, but if something's legal, you're like, oh, it must be okay because it's legal, right? So it's just a general conception. If it's not legal, most people aren't going to flock to do that thing, right? Like if murder was legal, if you could murder anyone legally, a lot more murders would happen, right? So
that's the plot of that one movie.
Which movie is that?
Oh, Jack, what movie is that? Where everybody, The Purge, right?
Oh.
Where everyone's able to, for just one day, you can do anything you want.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I will wrap up here. But I want to share a little bit more from one other woman, just because these stories are very powerful and again, they're not talked about, right?
Yes.
She said, the pain of my abortions was like keeping a beach ball under. I still hadn't dealt with it. I was just keeping it down. And I think that's true. Like I've heard from some women that it's easy to suppress it for a while, but then like the more time that goes on, the more you get flashbacks. Or when you have another child, you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I could have another child here. She says the medical field recognizes that it will affect you emotionally if you have a kidney taken from you, but not a baby taken out of your womb, which is so true, because apparently there's this brochure that her brother was handed after having like a kidney taken out, and it was like all about, you know, like you're gonna suffer emotionally, you're gonna realize
a sense of loss.
Yeah, a sense of loss, but no one talks about it with abortion, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, this is just a procedure. It's like going and getting your teeth cleaned. It's like, no, actually a piece of you is getting removed.
Right.
A human is getting removed out of the place that should be its home.
Right.
And these women are saying that, you know, as vandals have gone through and committed acts of domestic terrorism towards pregnancy resource centers here in our state, these women have actually felt empowered, inspired, and compelled to come out throughout our state and to share their stories because they believe that their stories can change hearts and minds. And I think that's very true, because I just think it's not talked about. That's why hearts and minds aren't being changed.
Right.
But if we bring up these things, like this is the reality of abortion that no one wants to talk about, that's when you see people changing their minds. That's all on that story, though. I think it's good to read through. There's more than what I talked about. I will have it linked in the show notes. Moses, though, I want you to tell us about our main topic for the day. Again, you guys can get involved. We will have details after Moses explains what is even going on. First of all, tell me about this so-called Respect for Marriage Act. What is it, and why on earth is it being pushed now?
Yeah, really good question. So this is, I think, almost the first time on this podcast that we have talked about gay marriage, which is kind of crazy when you think that we've been doing this for a year and a half.
That's how I got my start.
Yeah. I want you to tell that story, actually, if you're comfortable doing that in a little bit. But so I want to talk a little bit about why it is that Minnesota Family Council still takes a bold stand on this issue, even when other organizations and other elected officials, even if they supported traditional marriage up until they thought better of it, they thought better of it. So I want to give the example.
Mm-hmm.
Even one of the most conservative members of the U.S. Senate, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, he came out a couple weeks ago and said he didn't see any reason why he might not vote for same-sex marriage. Now, he's walked that back, but he's in a tough election year fight in a purple state, Wisconsin. And so the thing, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but Minnesota Family Council has always believed that God's design is for a man and a woman to be joyfully united for the course of their earthly life, just one man and just one woman, for them to have children together if that's God's will, for them to stay married, and for them to be a blessing to their grandchildren, again, if the Lord wills it. That is the way God designed marriage. It's in the Bible. That's the way every Christian society and most pagan societies have ordered their the way in which sexual relationships take place is generally a monogamous heterosexual relationship is the norm across almost all human societies across almost all of time. It's only in the last 50 years, even almost only in the last 40 years, that certain activists have tried to make homosexual marriage something normal. In fact, it was kind of invented as a way of obviously there are gay couples who obviously feel love for each other and they have some level of commitment to each other. I'm not denying that at all. But what happened is that for the gay rights movement, the marriage thing was trying to really push the gay rights movement into respectability. And that was an incredibly smart tactic because it just absolutely ultimately gave them the respectability that they needed, and ultimately I wouldn't say the public support that they needed, because gay marriage, our whole subject for today is necessary because gay marriage is not the law of the land per se. It was a court case, the Obergefell decision in 2015, that made gay marriage legal across the United States. It has never been litigated or legislated by Congress. In fact, there is federal law, the Defense of Marriage Act, which was passed by bipartisan majorities and signed by President Bill Clinton, that defines marriage as one man and one woman in federal law. Now, that's not enforceable anymore because of the Obergefell decision, but it's in federal law, and there is a bill right now to overturn it. But I wanted to make the point, Grace, that that this is an issue now because there's been this huge propaganda movement around this issue to the point, and I really think that many of our listeners are going to be shocked at this. 82% of Minnesotans, when polled, say that they support same-sex marriage. So this is an issue where we're pushing against the tide, and
we lost really badly on it too. I think that's
there was a marriage amendment in the state, and
I just mean culturally though, not even just in Minnesota.
Oh, sure.
I feel like because it was such a big loss, like nationwide, people feel like it's not a winnable proposition anymore. It's not one of the battles that we can win. So it's like, why fight it? Not only that, like you say, there's been so much messaging around it that no longer, like, this is something that even people who oppose surgery on minors, they're still going to usually support gay marriage because they're like, oh, that doesn't affect anyone else. That just affects them. Love is love. Even if they are very conservative on other gender issues,
right,
they're going to be squishy on this, which I think it's weird because we've come so far so fast. Because it was only, was it 10 years ago in our state? And then like 9 years ago or whatever?
It was 2015. Yeah. It's a blink of an eye in historical.
So short.
Yeah.
And even looking back on my life, like in high school, and I've only been out of high school for 4-ish years now, not even 4 years yet. This wasn't that common. It wasn't common to be trans. It wasn't common to be gay. It wasn't socially like a cool thing, and not even just in Christian circles. I just mean in general. But now if you come out as gay, if you come out as trans, and it's trans now, it's not gay. It's like if you come out as trans, then you're super cool automatically and you get a bunch of followers and you're trendy. I'm trying to understand how it happened so fast, because I don't think we've ever lost on a cultural issue this big, and it's traveled so fast so quickly.
I would add an asterisk to that. It certainly feels fast because we're the ones living through it.
True.
Obviously, as we know and our listeners know, it didn't happen that fast because the groundwork was laid back in the 1960s. The sexual revolution, the idea. So I talked about monogamous heterosexual marriage. So in the 1960s and 70s, the idea of monogamous kind of went out the window. The idea of adultery being truly shameful, the adultery of the idea, of being of being a virgin when you get married, the idea of not fooling around before you get married. All of those things went away a couple generations ago.
And then the rise of feminism too.
The rise of feminism is part of that. I think there are
We should recommend our boy Carl Trueman.
Yeah, here. Absolutely. Actually, Carl Trueman's book and our episode interviewing him, I think is a great...
We'll link it down below.
One of the best explanations, his book, The Rise and the Triumph of the Modern Self, one of the best explanations of how we did get to this point.
Yeah.
How it feels like it happened so quickly, but really the roots go back to Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Which is true. I don't mean like the roots, like this didn't happen as a progression. What I mean is we went so fast from gay marriage shouldn't be legal, it's not something our culture supports generally, to now almost everyone supports it.
Yeah, in 2008, the largest and most populous state in the country, California, rejected gay marriage at the ballot
2008.
box. The same year that Barack Obama was elected president. And just 7 years later, the Supreme Court decided that gay marriage was the law of the land.
And now we have PragerU, the CEO of PragerU, going out and supporting this kind of thing. Like, she commented on Dave Rubin's post when he announced that he, with his gay partner, we're going to, like, adopt a child through a surrogate.
It's not adoption, it's surrogacy.
Right.
It's child buying.
True. She commented, and she was like, congrats, so happy for you, like, heart, party emoji, emoji. That's the CEO of PragerU. And obviously I don't agree with them on every single thing, but generally I like PragerU. I like that organization.
Yeah.
It's shocking because it's a very conservative organization, and yet their CEO is out there celebrating the commercialization of children and wombs.
I think So when we talk about this issue, we're not just fighting, quote unquote, the libs. We are fighting the conservative establishment who has decided that they want to lose on this issue, and that we have lost on this issue.
That's what they've decided.
And so why are we talking about this now? Well, it's because of Dobbs.
Yep.
In the Dobbs decision, for the first time, a quote unquote right that had been granted by the Supreme Court in the 20th century was completely rolled back. Now, we can talk about whether whether the Supreme Court should go further, whether the Supreme Court should say that there is a right to life in the Constitution for children in the womb. And I think they should. But at any rate, Justice Thomas, in his opinion and in other statements, even though the Dobbs decision specifically says that it doesn't necessarily affect other rights that are supposed to have come out of the 14th Amendment right to privacy, even the whole idea of privacy being in the 14th Amendment was invented by the court. And so Griswold v. Connecticut, the birth control case, and Obergefell, the gay marriage case, are both mentioned as possible rights that could be under threat from Trump's justices. First of all, the Supreme Court has made absolutely no signals that they want to overturn gay marriage. Justice Thomas certainly does. That's no secret.
I would see it as very unlikely that would happen.
It is very unlikely. But this bill, the Disrespect for Marriage Act, as I like to call it, is not simply about it's not about just gay marriage. So I want to read 3 reasons from Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a trusted organization that we know stands up for. Grace was talking about them just last week because she went to the ADF conference. So they are a trusted organization. They don't come out and say these things flippantly. 3 reasons to oppose this bill. I've talked a little bit about the principled reasons. Those are very important. I'm pretty sure most of our listeners are telegraphing with us when we say marriage is between a man and a woman because God made it that way. But also, that's not just what this bill is about. 1, it would require the federal government to recognize any state's definition of marriage, such as polygamous marriages, without any limitations. Now, you might think that's a slippery slope argument, and you would be wrong because the state of Utah just decriminalized polygamy.
So
and
gross.
The bill, I read the text of the bill. It appears to make it so that the federal government and all other states would have to recognize that a throuple who were married in Utah would be legally married in Minnesota, would be eligible for spousal benefits. It's all of the other benefits that the law gives to marriage. Yes, unfortunately, it is called that.
That's hilarious. It's like, I can't believe we're living in the upside down.
Yeah, of course, in Utah is all the creepy Mormons.
The Stranger Things Vecna song has been going in my head all day because I feel like it's played so much, like the da da. You know that one?
Not the Kate Bush one.
That one.
The Kate Bush song?
I think so. The one that
Running Up That Hill?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that song. I wish we could play it.
It's more overplayed than Let It Go at this point. I was complaining about it on my story today before I came to work. It's so annoying. Like, I'm sitting, the radio's going, and then that song is every 3 songs.
Okay, I just love Kate Bush so much that I'm just so glad that she's getting more attention. So I'm not.
I don't know why I brought that up.
Just be mad about it, Grace.
It's just, I like the song, but now I don't because I've heard it so much.
Okay, you know what? Fair enough. Let me give you these other 2 reasons, though.
Okay.
Second, it would empower activist groups to sue religious individuals and organizations that believe marriage is only between one man and one woman. 3, it would jeopardize the tax-exempt status of nonprofit organizations that believe marriage is only between one man and one woman. So the last thing I want to say about this, or almost the last thing I want to say is, so the play that's being run here is the play that was run after the Civil Rights Act. So the Civil Rights Act in the mid-'60s made it a crime to discriminate on the basis of race for jobs, housing, etc., a bunch of different things. And that's a good thing. I support that. Now, that was a case where fundamental rights were being denied to a huge group of individuals, where in a sense there is a right to be wrong. Of course, there's always a right to be wrong on these issues. There's still, you can still find the Ku Klux Klan and other groups like that. They're still out there doing things today. They're not they're not in federal prison. You know what I'm saying? But in the early 70s, or late 70s, actually, there was a school in South Carolina, a college. It's a Baptist school. I'm going to forget the name of it. Do you remember the school I'm talking about?
In California?
Yeah, South Carolina.
No.
It's a super conservative Baptist school, and they prohibited interracial marriage among their students.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was, I think, relatively common.
You can prohibit that as an institution?
No. That's the thing, Grace. And I understand your surprise. They couldn't prohibit that. At the Supreme Court, they lost their tax-exempt status because they were disallowing interracial marriage. I'm so sorry that I can't remember the name of the school.
Though.
Yeah. It was a huge case. They eventually relented, and now they have, as I believe, a ton of African-American students, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a huge case. So the idea was within just 15 years, this went from being something that it wasn't even within federal law to you can lose your tax-exempt status. Now, let's be clear. Being black is not the same thing as deciding that you're homosexual, deciding that you're transgender.
Right.
If you're discriminated against on the basis of your race, that is just horrible. It's actually even prohibited in the Bible, okay?
Yep.
Show no partiality. We've talked about this on the podcast a lot. Now, so when your sexuality, on the other hand, it's just a completely different issue. Because marriage is between one man and one woman. Humans are created in all different colors and shades. That's just the way God made us. But also God made us in a way in which marriage between one man and one woman is the norm. So the idea that people are trying to run this playbook on us and say conservatives who deny conservatives who affirm marriage between a man and a woman are the same as people who oppose interracial marriage. It's actually even in the text of this bill.
Wow.
The text of this bill says interracial marriage, and also gay marriage. It's like it literally explicitly ties those two things together. Like if you're against gay marriage, then you must be the racist bigot who is against interracial marriage as well. And that's absurd. I don't know anybody who's against interracial marriage. And I know many people who are happily interracially married. It's just like, it's absurd. So that is the play that people are attempting to run.
Yeah. So let's talk. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I want to say that for our listeners, if let's say that you support gay marriage, you know what? Do your thing. But what this bill would do is prohibit anybody from disagreeing with you.
Right.
At the risk of losing their tax-exempt status, their funding. If you are a conservative, but you're fine with gay marriage, but do you want the government to decide what people can believe and what they can't believe on this issue, which is so fundamental to the biblical teaching on sexuality? It's just, I find it absurd.
Yeah. So here's what we want to say, though. The fact is that you guys can do something, right?
Yes.
Like our listeners right now can go do something. Moses, tell them what they can do to take action on this very, very important topic.
So we need to raise the profile of this issue. We need people to be talking about this at the national level. I looked today, and I don't think the vote has been scheduled yet, but it is coming soon. Senator Schumer is going to bring this to the Senate floor unless something really goes wrong for him. And so the question has been for several months now, will there be 51 votes? And it seems like there are at least 47 votes right now.
Because they have all the Democrats, right? And then they need 10 Republicans to vote with them? Is that what they need? Because they need 60 votes to proceed?
I'm not entirely sure what the threshold is.
Okay, but I do know the Democrats are all, let's go for it. But then the Republicans, it's a question of, how many squishy Republicans will we have?
I think that's right, in that they do need 60 votes because they need to overcome the filibuster. So that's what you need to overcome the filibuster right now, except on judicial appointments. And the Senate is so confusing. So sometimes they need 51 votes, sometimes they need 60 votes. So Senator Klobuchar and Senator Smith, our senators here in Minnesota, they need to hear from you. They need to hear that you stand
Use your voice.
Yes, use your voice. They need to hear that you stand for marriage between a man and a woman as designed by God. So there'll be a link here for you to take action right now. Send a letter. Tell them, and it's a very rational letter. We're not saying that, we're not making all these crazy Bible thumping remarks in that letter. We're saying, Senator, here's why this bill is bad for our nation.
And in our alert, if I'm not mistaken, don't we already have a draft written for them? And then they can kind of make it their own, add what they want, but they have like a template that they can.
There's a template, and in fact, in this case, it cannot be edited. So it's like adding your name to a petition, basically. And you send that, and that goes directly to Senator Klobuchar, Senator Smith. I did this morning. I got a formal letter response from Senator Klobuchar. Nothing from Senator Smith yet. But this matters. If we raise and then please share this alert with family, friends, and neighbors. If they're in Minnesota, it will. Other states are doing things for their stuff, but this alert will only work for Minnesota residents. And just make the case. Say to your elected leaders, this is why we need to uphold man-woman marriage. And actually, Grace, I wanted to ask you about that because you've been on record
oh boy
talking about the benefits of a marriage between man and a woman, and especially as that relates to children. So do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So this is how I got my start at MFC / in politics when I was 11 years old, and I think we've referenced it before. And it's always weird because somehow in my circles, people always find out about it, and they're either really mad about it.
They find out about it from your dad?
Oh, no, they find out about it online.
Oh, really?
Who Googles their classmate? I don't know. Who Googles, like, the kid at their church? Not me. I've never Googled Moses. Maybe I should since he's our director of communications. But, like, who Googles Grace Evans and comes up with my face? Because there's so many Grace Evans in the world. There are so many Grace Evans. But for some reason,
I guess you make an impression on people.
So when I was 11, MFC was very involved in the Minnesota for Marriage campaign, and they basically needed a child to testify because the opposition was bringing in a lot of children to be like, I don't even know what their argument was as children. Maybe like, oh, we love our same-sex parents. I don't know. They were bringing in all these poster children, right? And these children...
It's like, they're your parents. I'm glad that you love your parents.
Right.
Okay? That's good.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's normal or normative.
Yeah. But then I was like the poster child for this side, I suppose. And my dad asked me one day, he was like, how would you like to testify at the Capitol? And no experience in politics, no experience in public speaking. Like, the only reason that I wasn't like quaking when I did that public speaking was because I had done a little bit at my private school, like Speech Meet. The first time I gave a speech, it was in like 4th grade, and it was a poem, and I went up there and I completely blanked and everything.
Oh,
and I was just shaking, and I went and sat down, and then I went up and gave it later. But imagine if I didn't have that experience and wasn't used to public speaking at least a little bit, and then went and testified.
Lesson.
Right.
Yeah.
So go classical education. But basically, so I testified. My main thrust, if you will, was that men and women both have different roles that are unique. And my dad is amazing and my mom is amazing, but my dad can provide me as a child only with things that only he can provide. And my mom can provide me with things only she can provide. Like my mom, for instance, I said in my testimony, I think, is like, she teaches me how to be a woman. She teaches me things my dad can't teach me, right? Yeah. Whereas my dad teaches me like how protected I am and different things about me that my mom can't teach me. Like they work together, right? And so I said that, and then after I gave my whole testimony, I asked what would you call it? It's not the jury. It's like the committee. The committee. There we go. The committee. I said, I want to ask you a question. Which parent do I not need, my mom or my dad? And basically our strategy, my dad and I's strategy and MFC at the time, was I just stare them down and like smile and like look everyone in the eye, every committee member. And I did that for 15 seconds, and then I said, I'll ask again, and I asked the question again, and then I did the stare, and then I said, well, it looks like no one can answer my question. Thank you so much for your time, because my time was up. Mm-hmm. And then I said, like, I hope you can see that everyone needs and deserves a mom and a dad. Yeah. And so that was my start.
I just think that's so awesome. I mean, like, I was in college, at this point I was in Idaho, but I'm just so glad that I'm so glad that you did that.
Thanks,
it's just
Moses.
so cool.
I went slightly viral, and it was called A Bigot and called Brainwashed, and they were like, you're gonna grow up and know that you were such a transphobe or homophobe, blah blah blah.
Right.
And it was all these things. But now, it's just weird because people will randomly come up to me that know me. I've just known them for a while, and they'll be like, I Googled your name last night, or I found this random video of you when you were 11 years old. And it's just like, either they're really mad about it or they think it's really cool. So
I think that is, what
know.
is the psychology of someone who's really mad at you for something you did when you were 11? I mean, yes,
I
you
guess
still hold
with
those
cancel
views.
culture.
Yeah, Grace is one of those people who did something so bad in the eyes of our culture, right? At age 11, that, you know, like,
Yeah, true.
It's going to be like, you know, you have a glittering future ahead of you. But if you wanted to
Well,
go
thank
work
you.
for like Target or something.
Nope. If I wanted to be like a business exec or something, no.
Well, depending on the business, some like more blue collar
Yeah,
businesses
but
are
Target,
super,
no way.
Yeah, exactly. They'd
Yeah.
be like,
Or like
Evans,
Optum.
your history.
I thought about working for Optum because they're the biggest like healthcare provider here, and great organization to like climb the corporate ladder in. No way could I get in. No way.
Huge diversity.
I mean, we
equity,
also have
and
this
inclusion
podcast
targets.
of me being like, abortion's always wrong, and all these other critical race theory, all these other things.
Yeah.
They just play it back for me or something in the interview. They'd be like, so we found this dirt.
You know, in the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, when Will Smith shows up to the interview and he's like wearing the worst outfit ever and he's like late.
Gosh.
And that would be Grace, except all she's
I dress
done.
nice.
Exactly, you would be dressed nice,
Yeah.
but it would be your evil right wing persona.
Not even right wing Christian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How are we doing on time, Jack? Asking our producer. We're doing good? Okay. I want to ask Moses what you're reading to close out this episode. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like we skip that sometimes and it doesn't feel the same without it. So tell me what you're reading and then I'll tell you what I'm reading.
Well, I am about to, I think I talked about the British history book that I'm reading last week. So I'm almost done with that. And I also talked about A Crossing to Safety. So what I'm about to start, actually, is J.K. Rowling's new book. And I really have to...
Is this the one under her name or under her...
It's under her pseudonym.
Pseudonym, yeah. I was
Robert Galbraith.
Okay.
And
that's a very cool pseudonym.
It is
I just
a
have
cool
to
name.
say.
And she writes these murder mysteries. It's called the Cormoran Strike series, and I have to say they are amazing. Like, they are so good.
I will get them from the library. So you're reading the first one now.
No, I have read the 5 that have come out so far. They're all honestly just...
Are they a series?
It's a series, yep, with the same detective. And the new one is called The Ink Black Heart, and I forgot that it was coming out, and it came out yesterday. And I'm
oh my gosh,
so excited. My only question right now is Kindle or hardcover, because...
hardcover.
I think
then
I might
can
have
borrow
to.
it.
And I have to say, my wife and I are going on vacation soon. I'm wondering if I get it now, will I be able to resist reading it until we go on vacation? Because honestly, I love these things. But the one thing that makes it relevant to this episode is because J.K. Rowling has been accused of quote unquote transphobia.
Oh, I know.
And in literally the NPR headline today, guys, and you cannot make this up.
And she literally made Dumbledore a gay character. And you're like, you're accusing this woman?
Yeah, of all people to accuse of...
She's very... woke.
This is the literal NPR headline today. New J.K. Rowling novel is about a transphobe getting doxxed. That is to say, someone who's transphobic having their private views being unwillingly made public, and they lose their job or whatever. I haven't read the book. I don't want to hear any spoilers about it, but I understand that is actually in the book, that type of event. It's just insane, and that not the fact and. Like, that is happening. People are losing jobs over their opinions on these social issues, and J.K. Rowling is getting flack for just pointing that out. It's just so crazy. Anyway, Grace, what are you reading?
Yeah, I'm actually pulling up my Goodreads right now because I feel like there's a lot of books I've read recently, and honestly, I lose track of the books I read. Mm-hmm. So, pulling up my books, I just reread The Scarlet Pimpernel.
Oh,
have you read that?
Love it, yes.
Okay, so the only critique, the first time I read it, I gave it 4 stars. The second time, I think 4.5, I would say. The only thing I don't like is the ending is abrupt, and I won't give any spoilers. The one other thing is maybe it's... like, I haven't been married, so maybe that's the reason I feel this way, but I feel like the main character, like... falls in and out of love with her husband, kind of. that doesn't quite make sense to me of how you can go from like loving someone so much that you would marry them to the second after like basically hating them.
Well,
and then she like realizes without him being around that she like loves him so much. I don't know. It's like
absence makes the heart grow fonder.
That seems a little unrealistic. Maybe it's because I haven't been married. But then I also read the intro to it, and apparently the Baroness who wrote it, she wrote it within 5 weeks. So she wrote it super fast.
Wow.
So I think that like the plot could have been deeper, and it could have been a book the size of Anna Karenina. Probably she could have added so much detail, but instead it was pretty short. So only critique, but great book. I also, let's see, currently reading. I recently reread Even Exile by Rebecca Merkel, which is a really good one. Have you read that one?
No, I've heard good things.
Super good. One of my favorite nonfiction books of all time. I'm also rereading Brave New World right now.
Oh,
it's been a while since I've read it.
Chilling.
And very chilling. I think almost more chilling than 1984.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also even more predictive of what's actually going on.
Yeah. And then speaking of Harry Potter, I'm reading Harry Potter 4 again. I've read them so many times.
One of the best.
But this summer I read like 6 first, and then I read them all out of order, completely out of order, like 6, then 2, then because I don't know, I have my favorites or the ones I remember the least, and I want to read those ones. And then I get going, and then I'm like, oh, I just have to read them all. So 4 is the last one I have to read the whole series this summer.
Wow,
because it's the one I know the most. So yeah, those are the books I'm reading. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the Family Beacon podcast. I am Grace Evans. I'm here with Moses Bratchard. Tune in next Friday to get the facts so you can stand for truth.
And remember to take action and tell your senators that it is so important to stand up for marriage between one man and one woman. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to or watching this episode of the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you're up to date on life, family, and religious freedom. You can follow us on Instagram at MN Family Council and subscribe to us on YouTube to watch our content. Get the facts, stand for truth.